We welcome in Husker Online's Bryan Munson. Bryan, you made it to Game Week just like the rest of us. How you feeling?
Well, we're almost there. I mean, obviously we got a little bit of a dose on Saturday. That was exciting enough, huh? I mean, that was a tremendous game on Saturday. I think that Georgia Tech played an excellent game, and then we get a little bit more on Thursday with North Dakota State and Colorado, and sooner before later, man, it's going to be time in Memorial Stadium on Saturday, dude.
Do you have a read on Thursday's game? Do you think that the Bison are able to keep it close? Do you think Colorado's too talented with North Dakota State losing its head coach and not the same program? Where are you at with that game?
You know, I don't have a look. I think that this is the kind of game right here that all Division I head coaches hate to play. You got a team that's obviously very talented. NDSU, they've got a lot of talent on that side of the. They got the ability to go ahead and just basically run over everybody in their division, and you run the risk of basically overlooking them. You've got Nebraska, the week after, so you could be looking a little bit too far down the road. You've had some distractions this week in Boulder about, barring a reporter from asking questions, and it just seems like there's nothing been positive, like in that regard, coming out of Boulder. So there is a thing, at least, that kind of supports the idea this is a trap game. So I think it's going to be a little closer than what people kind of suggest. I know that Colorado's a very talented team. I think people look past, the development aspect that you get from going to a school like North Dakota State and how they kind of do their things with their program. So I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close Thursday night. It's going to be a good game. And I think it's one of those things that people can kind of use to get ready for 2 weeks down the road.
Trap.
No doubt.
Trap game. Like a mug.
Yep, no doubt.
Bryan, before we get into some current recruiting, let's maybe just take a look back at the summer, right, for Nebraska. Let's start with maybe the negative. We'll move into the positive. What did Nebraska not get accomplished this summer that you think the coaching staff would have liked to, whether, for anything in 24 or more likely 25 and beyond?
They're still missing on those top guys. Sanders Jr., there's a forecast or prediction today for Michael Terry to go to Texas. Even though you're kind of waiting for him to come back to town next week. You missed on several of those top wide receivers, although you still have Hayes and Carpenter in the class. You didn't get Cortez Mills. You didn't get, you're going to miss on potentially on Terry. Emmanuel Choice, another one right there, but it looks like Nebraska still can get like into that top three, top four for those guys, can get on that final list. And then they just end up missing on them because I don't think that they have quite the run yet that they need to kind of be able to kind of do stuff. I think they need to have a little bit more success, have a little bit more of a winning record, show that they're on the right path to kind of getting that done. And then that's what they need to have to leverage, against, getting some of those guys a little bit more serious about Nebraska. They're making final twos, final threes. They're just not getting those guys on the board quite yet. And that's got to be frustrating for Rule, because I think that he can lay out a convincing plan. I think he can lay out, like, look, the path to the field is you sign on the dotted line and you come to Lincoln. You learn the offense or you learn the defense, and you're going to get an opportunity. I'm going to play the best guy available, whether it's a fifth-year senior or it's a brand new guy that just showed up in Lincoln yesterday.
Bryan, as we look at this Nebraska schedule, I mean, you don't want to predict 7-0 for a team that hasn't done that dating back to 2016, but there's at least a runway there where you can talk yourself into it. Are recruits looking at who Nebraska is playing at 7-0, where we know Nebraska has a lot of, visitors scheduled for this first month of the season with the first 4 games at home? Is momentum real enough in recruiting where recruits wouldn't care that Nebraska didn't beat, a top 5 team, a top 15 team, or even a top 25 team? As long as the vibes are good, they might, get pushed over the edge? Or is this where Nebraska needs a couple seasons of run in a big win or two to maybe, start moving the needle?
It's the latter. I think that you can start to, like, Jackson Cantwell is a very interesting guy, right? The number one offensive tackle in the country from Nixa, Missouri, is going to be in Lincoln on, September the 7th against Colorado. That guy right there is considering, of course, Alabama and Georgia and LSU and Missouri. I mean, he's got, all these SEC programs along with Nebraska that obviously are on his list. you can start to show 2026s, that I think that you're starting to have that kind of run that you're talking about there. I don't think you can move the needle well enough with the 2025. So if there was a way to kind of like dig back into things, you're going to kind of have both a good and a bad. The bad meaning that that another team that these other guys were committed to or were considering, has the head coach has gotten fired. They didn't start out the way that they wanted to. To where you could kind of be convincing enough for, a 2025 to kind of come back around and take a look at Nebraska. But I think Nebraska needs to get focused on the 26s and the 27th because of what you just said. They can get to 7-0. They can do that. They can start out that way. And then they need to be pushing that out there on the 2026s and the 2027s. If they can find a way in with the 2025, then great. They should be trying to look for, another offensive tackle to kind of go along with what they've got currently. They're still like in the market for a linebacker. Obviously, I think they'd be looking to upgrade anything that they could possibly do at the same time. But I think that really you're trying to leverage that for the juniors and the sophomores in the years to come.
I know there's a phrase, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Is that applicable in recruiting? Did Nebraska get worse, off as a program in its standing with Missouri on the way up, Kansas State and Kansas improving as well? Or did Nebraska get better this offseason? Did Nebraska improve its standing to, not just make the record get closer to those teams, but in recruiting too, maybe make up some ground that they might have lost?
I think that there is some truth to it. It's kind of hard to decipher because recruiting is this inexact science. You
Sure.
think somebody else has predefined the donkey, and now you're pinning the tail on it. And the bad news about the tail or the bullseye, is that bullseye is going to, is the kid, is the recruit. He's going to go to a school. He's looking for ideal circumstances about like how he's going to develop, barring injuries and setbacks and academic issues and whatever else, goes along with his time, in college. He needs great circumstances and great things around him to become the best possible player that he can be. So, if everything is kind of, everything being equal, I do feel like Nebraska has gotten better in some areas. I think that they have had a better chance to kind of get out there and they can do their things. And I think the Midwest is where they've been a little bit more accomplished this year. They've lost a little bit in Texas. They're still kind of trying to find a footing, I think, this year in Florida, which was so good to them in last year's class. You're wondering what kind of identity ever they're going to have in California, especially like when you add teams like UCLA and USC to the Big Ten Conference, you raise or increase the awareness of the Big Ten Conference, which obviously out there is very, very little. So I think that those are the things there to me that I still have question marks about. Like how is Nebraska going to go out there and really truly still be effective in Texas? Like Sarkisian's doing his best to lock down the state. Anybody right now, like with the A&M or the UT offers, they're tough to get out. So I think that they need to try to find a way to be more consistent in Texas. I think they need to try to find a way to get back into Florida and be consistent there. And, show me a plan for California, because I think that they're kind of onesie twosie here and there, but nothing is real consistent. Nothing's really full force. I think a lot of that is going to matter about like with what happens with Tony White at the end of the season. Is he going to get that head coaching opportunity? Because he seems to be one of the guys that I think that has the most kind of ties out there to the state of California.
What about like a Donovan Raiola? We think about the Hawaiian Connection. Is there anything on the West Coast, a Polynesian connection with him, or you think it's just primarily Tony White on the staff right now?
Well, I think he does. I think actually Coach Raiola's got some really good ties into Utah too. That's back through Finoti and Finoti being, kind of the mentor trainer for offensive linemen as well. But I think that obviously the Raiola, I don't think people really understand. The Raiola name in Hawaii is almost like royalty. It is literally kind of held in that regard. So I think that honestly, when he shows up, in the state of Hawaii and is recruiting a guy, I mean, it gets noticed. And I think that they know obviously who Dominic and Donovan are. They know the bloodlines back to Dylan. So it's one of those things. I think he can be effective in the state of Hawaii. And I think they're doing pretty well getting the Tom Mua last year and getting Torres this year. I think they're doing pretty good in that state. I think that they can be more effective in the state of Utah too, and I think that can get opened up by Raiola as well.
I want your thoughts on that. What would your plan be if you're the head coach or you're starting a program, you want to make inroads in California and Utah? Obviously winning, right? I mean, those are proud high school football states with plenty of good college football teams in them. What would your plan be for Nebraska to attack those two states?
Well, you got to identify very quickly, who are the players that are interested in leaving the state. A lot of those guys, they'll just flat out tell you that they are not staying in California. So you have to know who those players are, and you have to target those guys. If they're your kind of players, they're your profile players, you have to know who they are, and you have to recruit them, and basically you stay on them. I think another area too, I mean, I kind of skipped over the Midwest. I think that they've done really well in the Midwest, but I think that, when you hire a guy like Jamar Mosey, you want to get really serious about Kansas City. And I think when you got a guy like on your commitment list, like Isaiah Mosey, you have a little bit of a success wave that you want to kind of ride out there in Kansas City. And I think Nebraska's been looking for any type of inroads to happen there. I think that they're going to want to do something very similar to what they need to do in California, and that is identify the guys that they feel they can get to leave the state of Missouri, because Missouri obviously is dialing it up with NIL. They're throwing a lot of money around at those kids to stay home. And then you kind of have like those next tier of programs that seem to kind of get the players that are either, considering Missouri, or they can kind of get them to leave, like in Oklahoma. You need to kind of find a way to get into that kind of competition with those schools for those players, those top players that want to leave the state. So I think it's very similar. You just need to identify the players that you feel like are willing to leave, if given kind of NIL being equal, and then you can kind of sell them on the facilities, the coaching staff, the success, all the other things that kind of come along with it, and show why Nebraska would be a great place for them to go.
All right, Bryan, game week, like we mentioned, Saturday, the first opportunity. What does the visit situation look like for Nebraska? I'm sure you'll be writing about it. Don't want to steal all your thunder. I want to make sure people go to Husker Online and read it. But maybe just a little taste, a sneak peek of what fans can expect, who fans can expect to see on Saturday against UTEP.
Yeah, I'm really kind of expecting a lot more of the local guys there this week. Obviously, everybody's coming in for September 7th, and they can all get that information basically for free if they go to Husker Online and do the drop-down visit of recruiting and click on visits. That it'll pop up for each weekend. They'll notice that basically I don't have anything in there for UTEP yet, because essentially all the local guys said, I'm going to be there every week. And I've really been focusing on all the out-of-state guys and when they plan on coming back in, whether it's Hammerbeck in South Dakota or, Lateef out in California. But all of those guys right now are mainly coming in for Colorado. So I would look for this weekend to be kind of a refinement of the process kind of thing for, Sean Padden and Vince Ginta and Mosey and those guys to kind of figure out how the recruiting is going to work. How are they going to handle that large of a group, the next week when they come back into town against Colorado. And they got some really good opportunities to kind of do that because of the game start time. But I think it's going to be mainly local and regional guys, and I'll have a much better handle on who all those guys are going to be either like Wednesday, Thursday this week.
There you go. Husker Online or Bryan Munson _ on Twitter to stay up to date with all of that. Bryan, once again, we made it. I can't stop saying it. It is game week. Enjoy the rest of your week. Hope it goes quick, and we'll have plenty more to talk about on Monday.
Sounds great, man. Be good.